welcome to Center for Victory podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Zack DelTurco. I'm an executive consultant here at Center for Victory, and today I have Greg from Beratung Advisors. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about what you do here within your company.
Absolutely. Well, because of what I do, I'm actually going to start out with a little bit of a compliance script here. And just let you know, just like he said, my name is Greg Fuhrer. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also the CEO of Beratung Advisors. And the compliance is that I offer securities and investment products and services through Waddell & Reed, Inc., a member of FINRA SIPC, and Beratung Advisors is a separate entity from Waddell & Reed. So with that compliance being mentioned, what I do on a day-to-day basis is I run a team. I am personally a financial advisor. I work with clients to create financial plans, to educate and empower them so that they can make informed financial decisions. And I help educate and empower my team so that they can help others. And what we are is we are a boutique financial planning firm in the Western PA market.
Gotcha. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey of, say, employment or your ownership. So recently, in years past, you were working for a company, a Fortune 500 company, and then you broke off and did your own thing. What made you come to that conclusion?
Absolutely. So I was blessed with an amazing company, an amazing job. I learned a lot while I was there. I had a lot of great leaders that I could learn from. I was compensated very well. But the problem was I had certain values that were really important to me, and I had certain things I wanted to do for my clients that I wasn't able to do in a larger company. The company's values didn't always line up with my values. One of the practices I do is every Monday, I take 5 of my clients and I pray over them. And I send them a letter the week prior letting them know that I'm praying over them. That thing was something I learned from the pastor that did the same thing to us. That letter came on a day when both my wife and I needed extra prayers. To open up that letter and not know what that was like was a life-changing moment. And I wanted to pay that forward for my clients. But when you work for a Fortune 500 company, they don't want you to send out a letter saying that as a Christian, I'm praying over you. Now I have clients that are atheist, I have clients that are Jewish, I have clients that are Buddhist, but they still appreciate the fact that in my faith that I'm praying over them. And that's something that's allowed me to get in touch with my clients. It's changed the way that I interact with clients on a daily basis. That's just one example of how my values didn't align with my company. And so what I wanted to do was go somewhere where I was able to have the values that I believe in and live out my personal core values the same as my company core values. And there were some other reasons that led to that as well too. I wanted to have more control over the technology I use. When you're with a Fortune 500 company, they're going to control that. It was a big decision. I was blessed to grow up in a household of small business owners, and my wife happened to have a dad who happened to be a financial advisor with a big company and happened to leave to go out on his own. So she grew up around that and was extremely supportive. You know, I would not have been able to do it without my wife's support, and it's really been the biggest help for me is my wife's support. So having that great support system allowed me to chase that dream. It was a big leap of faith, but it needed to happen because I needed to find that wholeness.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, you were working for a Fortune 500 company, you were an employee, and then you became an owner. Let's talk about that mindset, that shift in mindset, how you went from being an employee to an owner. What had to change in the way you thought?
Well, it's constantly evolved from day 1 to day 2, and then day 1 to a couple years later. I think what really had to happen is I had to become unselfish. That's really what it was. When you work for a company, your W-2, you get the right and privilege to be selfish. That's not a good thing or a bad thing. But essentially, somebody else has the responsibility. Somebody else has to generate that amount of money so that you can have that paycheck, which allows you to focus on just the things that you need to focus on. You can look at whatever your employer lays out for you on a daily basis to achieve, and you achieve those things. And as long as you achieve those things, you work for a good employer, they're going to compensate you the way they should compensate you. When you go out and you start your own business, now you lose that right to be selfish. And every decision you have to make has to be based upon other people. I remember when I was really little, sitting in the living room with my dad distinctively, and he used to use his payroll company called Paychecks. And back then, they actually mailed the paychecks to you, and you had to sign them all and then give them back to your employees. And my dad had a rubber stamper that had his signature on there. And one of the things we'd do as a family is we'd sit around the table because there was a lot of paychecks. And I would sit there and help my dad rubber stamp these paychecks. And I remember my dad departing this lesson, and it happened more than once, that he would tell me to take that paycheck and look at the name on that paycheck and say that person's mortgage payment is in that paycheck. That person's car payment is in that paycheck. Their children's lunch money is in that paycheck. And if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, that person can't pay their bills. And it creates a sense of not being selfish that you really truly can't understand. Even growing up and being taught that lesson, I couldn't truly understand until I had my first employee and realizing that person literally cannot make their bill payments if I don't succeed. I think that that changes your focus. It changes the different way that you lead others, but it also changes the way you interact with your clients.
Yeah, so like statistics show that over 80% of employees are disengaged, and you know, off record we were talking about you and your company and your employees and how you guys are growing by 500% How do you keep your employees engaged?
Absolutely. So we actually were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, but there's a quote from Matt Keller, who's one of my favorite leadership gurus, and he said that to engage employees, they need to be three things. They need to be fully loved, fully known, and fully challenged. And that's really what my goal is on a daily-to-day basis. I want to know who they are. I want to be actively involved in their lives and know what their pain point is. You never know the baggage that somebody has that day. You don't know when some distant relative that was really important to them died. You don't know when they had an argument with their spouse the night before. You don't know when something financially significant happened in your life unless you're engaged with them and you know them. And you gotta love them. It goes back to that selfish. You gotta genuinely care about them. Your actions have to line up with your words, and you have to tell them on a daily basis how much you love them. Just like if you've ever read 5 Love Languages, you gotta fill up their love tank. You need to constantly show them that you love them, just like your spouse. And I think that's something we try to do every single day, is we try to let them know that we love them and how much they're part of us. But we also need to challenge them, and we also need to help them become better. So one of the things we do is we provide a lot of resources for personal growth and professional growth. It's one of our core values is education, and we're constantly challenging our employees to become better, not just in their work life, but also in their personal life. You know, it could be a challenge of a diet bet, an exercise bet outside of work that has nothing to do with their quarterly review, that I'm as a leader going to work with them to help them to achieve their goals. We put them into personal development groups that we pay for, so fully challenge them. I think, and that's really where we've been successful and why we're growing. And I think at the end of the day, all that's great, but it's only good if your actions line up with your words. One of the things we talk about here, our core values we want to live out every day. In our quarterly reviews, our core values are actually something they are tested on in their quarterly review. They're not just some words we put on a wall that we want to go to. I think a lot of times when companies create core values, they look at what they want to be as opposed to who they are. When we create our core values, it was who we were at the time. As being the founder of the company, and when I created the core values, I was smaller, it really was an extension of my personality. And I think a lot of people know me, and they had to describe me, they would probably come up with some of the words that are our core values. And if you saw them, they would say it lines up with my actions. And I think that's really the difference maker, is you have to have your actions of your company line up with your core values.
Yeah, so talk a little bit more about that. I mean, you know, I know we've talked, but a lot of people listening to this might not know your leadership journey. To you, that was almost second nature. To a lot of people that are listening, that isn't second nature. So how did you learn these values? How did you learn how to lead a company? Who were the significant people in your life that helped develop those skills early on?
Well, if I had to list everyone who was significant to help me, we'd need about 3 hours of this podcast. There's so many people that I would give thanks to that have helped me. People that had just one comment, one sentence at the right time that had a significant impact in my life. So I'm going to start out with saying I'm going to leave out a lot of names here. And I've shown gratitude to those people in thank you notes and let them know how they've impacted my life so they know who they are. But I think that really comes down to the core of I was privileged and blessed to grow up in a household that my mother and father installed values in me. My father was an optometrist by trade and ran a successful eye care business, but also got into business and opened up multiple bagel shops. And we also have a family golf course that we were involved in. So growing up, my dad was constantly showing me how to run the business, not from just lectures and here's how to do it, hands-on. He took me to work with him. He took me to employee meetings. He was also extremely involved in the community. He was a local elected official and served on a lot of nonprofit boards. He would take me to the meetings and live out those values. What that then installed in me was how to learn more. One of the biggest things I learned from him, and in his eulogy at his funeral, me and my brothers all talked about this, was he installed personal growth. I joke around and talk about how we would go to Florida on vacation, and we'd be driving down there, and the entire time he'd be listening to, back then, audio cassettes. Zig Ziglar was always his favorite. And so it's kind of funny, my wife and I, we talk about how both our fathers had passed away before we met, but we both had very similar experiences, and one of them was listening to Zig Ziglar when we were on vacations. But it was further than that. My dad was constantly invested in his employees for personal development and for personal growth, was constantly telling us. I remember one year for Christmas we all got day planners. And my brother was
You're like 2 years old. You're like, what in the world's
we were
this?
a little older at the time, but I remember my brother was a senior in high school, and he's 10 years older than me, and he thought he was going to be funny, and he wrote some stupid stuff on every single day that I'm not going to say in this podcast, but made my dad really mad because my dad was really trying to provide those tools. So that really created that basis of I was always going to educate myself to be better as a leader and always put servant leadership ahead. The other thing that my parents did was they taught me values of servant leadership through the Bible. I grew up in a home where our religion was not just something we dusted off every now and then, it was an active part of our life. We were constantly involved in just about everything we could be in the church, and the values were lived at home. So that really helped me up. So I took that upbringing, and then as I grew further in life, I always put myself in leadership opportunities, and I was always seeking them out. I think one of the other things that my father and my mother did very well that I try to do for my daughter is they prayed over me and they spoke blessings over me and always told me that I was going to be a leader. So one of the things I tell my daughter, who just turned 1 today, is
Congrats, man. That's huge.
pretty awesome. It's been a long journey to get her, but one of the things we tell her every day is she's going to be a world changer, and that she's a child of God and God loves her and has special plans for her. My dad always told us that we were going to be leaders, and that was always a sense of me, so I was always going to that. So one of the things we talked about, I actually was at the age of 21, at the time, the youngest elected official in PA, and being an incumbent for office. I was putting myself out there and putting myself in leadership positions. All throughout high school, I was involved in student government, class president up until my senior year when I lost. That's a sore second.
It's still sore.
So it's still sore. It was 2002 and I still remember it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was always putting myself in leadership positions. And every time that I put myself in leadership positions, what I did was I used it not to get to the next step, but to learn more. And as I'm involved in nonprofits, I serve on boards. Not only am I serving on a board to help out that nonprofit, but I'm doing it to become a better leader, and so I can serve my employees better and serve my team members better. And I think that's really where it is that journey for me is never enough. I constantly am immersing myself in personal development through podcasts and books. I typically read 4 to 5 books a month, and when I read them, one of the things I do is if I like the book, I'll read the book multiple times. The book I just finished up last week was 4 times in a row, and it was Carrie Newhoff, Didn't See It Coming. And a lot of times when I like a book, I'll read that book once a year. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, I read every single year. Rhinoceros Success, I read every single year. So I have certain books that I constantly read, and when I do them, I do book reports on them, and I talk about them so that I can learn. So that's really what I do to make myself better, and it extends to my team, and helping them to get better, and constantly never being satisfied with where we're at.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I heard early on, you had somebody who believed in you, somebody who talked to you about leadership, somebody who actually showed you what leadership looked like. More importantly, what servant leadership looked like. Absolutely. And I think that ties into your why. So explain your why. Explain what the Simon Sinek holds. Like, what is your why? If you don't have a why, you're just living. So explain to me and explain to us, what is your why and what kind of makes you tick? What makes you get up every single day?
My why, just in full disclosure, is not the format that Simon Sinek tells you to put it in.
Yeah.
Right? So Simon Sinek has a follow-up book that he wrote. It's about how to find your why. I actually just reread it this summer. But at the end of the day, I put it in my own language.
Mm-hmm.
And my why I found at the age of 16. I remember it like it was yesterday when I found my why. Essentially, I serve God by serving others. And that is what gets me up every single day. Anyone that truly knows me knows that that's who I am. It comes out in the fiber of my being. It comes out in my personal core values and my company core values, is I serve God by serving others. The way I discovered that was at my grandfather's funeral. My grandfather, just like my father, is one of those instrumental people that displayed servant leadership in everything that he did, putting others first in every action. When my grandfather died, the pastor talked in his eulogy with every sentence he ended, he served. It started out, I remember, like when World War II happened, Cecil went and enlisted in the Navy. He didn't wait to get drafted, he enlisted because he heard his country's call and he served. And it goes on, and he mentioned he served, he served, he served. And I remember looking at that and remembering that's why I look up to my grandfather and that's why I look up to my father, because they served. They were extremely involved in their churches, they were extremely involved in their family, they were extremely involved in their community. They served. And at that point I knew when I grew up, I wanted to serve. What I didn't connect the dots was the call part. And that really took me to later in my life to truly understand that service, what compelled me to do that, was because that was my way of honoring God. That was my way of understanding God's call and what He had been building me to do in my life. So that is my why, is that I do serve God by serving others.
Yeah, and I know you're really big on giving back, just like your father and your grandfather invested in you. Talk a little bit about your giving back aspect of serving on nonprofits and helping out leaders in this area.
One of the biggest things that I believe you can do as a leader to give back is just the same things that I talked about I saw in my life, is mentoring and showing somebody. So one of the things I do in my profession, I do mentor a lot of people that don't work for my company, that are younger. I serve in a lot of different capacities. Right now I'm mentoring 10 different people that are newer to our industry because I believe my industry is a noble profession, and when my industry gets better, the whole world gets better. So I take that time out of my schedule to pour into those people's lives, because when I got in this industry, there were people that poured into my life, and I'm paying that forward. So that's one of the ways I do that. One of the other ways I do that is, now that I get involved in nonprofits, I understand what it is that are my skill sets. So when I used to serve on a church council, the pastor that was pastor there always said, there's 3 types of people, and I quote him, other than when I actually quoted him in one meeting one time. He told me, Greg, I picked that up from somewhere else, and I don't know where I got it from, so I don't know who to quote on this. Somebody can find us on Google, but he said there's 3 types of people that make up the church. There's doers, there's dreamers, and there's donors. And I've heard that in other different forms, but that was something that kind of impacted me. He's one of those people that's really impacted my leadership journey, my faith journey. But when you think about that, we have the certain people, and I use a church setting, that they show up, they make the meals, they do everything, but they might not have the money to donate, right? And they might not be a dreamer. They can't see the future. You have the other people that are just donors. They're not going to really show up and do anything. But man, without that money, the doers can't do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Then you have the dreamers, and they set the pace for the organization. Well, I'm a dreamer. Yeah. I'm a forward-looking person. Sometimes my wife tells me I need to look at the present. Sometimes my business partners tell me I need to look at the present, stop looking at the future. Yeah. But I'm a natural-born dreamer. So I try to harness that dream in all the organizations. So one of the things I've learned, my wife is a doer. She wants to roll up the sleeves and get involved, and she's created that. But with my capacity that I've learned to serve is on boards, board governance, and mentoring CEOs, mentoring the people that are in leadership positions to help them to get better. Doesn't mean I don't do, doesn't mean I don't I guess donor, don't. But I do get involved in those, and I do lead by example in that. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. That's another lesson that my dad imparted to me. You always park furthest away from the building, and tell you customers, they park close, employees park further away, leaders park furthest away. We'd walk across the parking lot, we'd pick up trash. Just last week I was picking up a dirty diaper in the parking lot of my one office.
Was it your daughter's?
It was not. I wish it was. It was an unbeknownst person to me, and I made sure I washed my hands afterwards. But my employees were able to see me through the window. It's that leading by example. It's so extremely important when you do that. But I think we have those 3 people. So one of the things I try to do is I try to carve out time in my schedule to be involved in all those organizations, and I try to lead by example in those organizations. And the other thing that I do, which I believe that you don't want to be bragging, but you also have to be an advocate. And I'm a natural born advocate. So any of the nonprofits I'm involved in, I'm constantly telling others what I'm doing. And you wouldn't believe the impact it has on other people, because when they see you and they hear about it, they want to get involved. And I think a lot of times, people that are in servant leadership positions don't want to tell others what they're doing, because they look at it as braggadocious. They look at it as they're being somebody that's doing it for the wrong reasons. But at the end of the day, you have to inspire others, and you have to tell others about it. So that's one of the other things I do with my nonprofits I'm involved in. I am constantly shouting from the mountaintops about how great they are, and I think that does a lot to help them.
Yeah, I want to take a pause real quick and kind of rewind. You were talking about you're a dreamer, and how people can fall into 3 different categories. And I think a lot of times in leadership, we let everybody see the good stuff, right? I'm a dreamer. I make things happen. I run at a fast pace. I have vision for the next 15 years for my company. But we just talked briefly before this podcast about how, that dreaming and running at the fast pace actually caught up to you. Just talk a little bit about how, not necessarily that situation, but how do you overcome those blind spots in your personality and your leadership?
I'm going to quote a good friend of mine, it's a good friend of yours, Doug Smith, and said, we weren't meant to do life alone. And that's something I just truly take to heart. It's something I personally believe in. God did not design us. And so part of my leadership journey, I went through a lot of strife in the churches I grew up in. The church that I grew up in and I loved, the pastor's wife had an affair and it broke up the church. And then the church that my mom and my dad were involved in when I was in high school, I still stayed in my own church and went to a different church. There was a lot of things that I could get into, but my dad ended up leaving the church and didn't come back till pretty close before his death. And my mom was an assistant pastor there, so that made a lot of strife, a lot of negative things of organized religion. I walked away from organized religion and said, I'm going to have a personal relationship with God. The funny part when I did that is, when I read through the Bible, you know what I realized? We weren't meant to do life alone. We just weren't.
Yeah.
We got to be around other believers, and we need to surround ourselves with other people. Jesus didn't come here on the earth and spread the gospel by himself. He brought 12 leaders with him, and he poured into those leaders. And I think that's just such a key thing that we forget, is we need to have people around us. And getting back to that church thing, I had to realize the church is run by men. And by men, I mean mankind. And we are fallen, so we're never going to be a perfect church. There's always be strife.
Yeah.
But we still need to go and be around people. And I think that what you do for your blind spots, I have an accountability partner, one of my friends, that we are extremely intentional. Every Thursday at 7:30 a.m., we tell each other what's wrong in our lives. And I had a mental breakdown just about in May. I took on too much. I overcommitted because I'm a dreamer.
Yep.
I'm worried about the future.
We can do it.
We can do it.
We'll just work
And
through it.
my wife had to talk to me about I need to change and spend more time and stop working so much. And he was able to literally be completely honest with me and tell me what I needed to hear. I'm surrounded in a mastermind group. One of the books I mentioned earlier I read every year is Think and Grow Rich, the concept of a mastermind. If you're not around people, your friends and your family are not going to tell you, what you need to hear. If your wife walks out and says, do I look good in this dress? And she does it, she looks good in the dress, right? Now, luckily I'm married to an amazing woman who will tell me what I need to hear more often than I want to hear, which is why I'm successful, is because of my wife. But at the end of the day, we need those people in our lives. The bishop here locally, Bishop Zubrick, was doing a leadership talk that I was at. And he talked about another faith person of another religion that literally surrounds himself with a no person that just tells him all the time no. And that really left an impact on me. You need to, in a leadership position, you need to have people that have your blind spots. And so one of the things I've done in my life has been very, very intentional of having people around to tell me. Even my own business partners were designed. We use an assessment that actually your company provides for us, predictive index. One of the things what I wanted to find was those people that were going to be the realistic people, the people that tell me no, the people that live in the present. And I think you need to have that balance in any organization, because a dreamer like myself, we might spend the whole budget. Because guess what? There's more coming in the future.
Yeah.
You know, we want to build for the future. We build for the future. We're never satisfied. But sometimes I need somebody to say, hey, you know what? We got to pay the bills today, right? That's obviously a hyperbole, but I think that's where it can go. If you don't have the checks and balances, or what I ran into in May this year, where I just started working too much, and because I kept seeing the future, and I kept saying, well, if I build this more, Tim Tebow has a book that he wrote, and in a part of the book he wrote, he talks about if one's good, two's better. And he kind of had this mentality why he got successful, because if the coach told me to do 10 push-ups, well, if 10 push-ups are good, 11's better. And 11's better, 12's better.
Yeah.
And he kept getting motivated. Like, I remember my brother and I were traveling, and we were listening to this audiobook together, and it didn't resonate as well with him as it did with me because of our personalities. And that really sunk in that I can do that sometimes. And I think that dreamers have a certain thing that's bad, and doers have a certain thing that's bad. And I think one of the things is we're all perfect. We're all icons created by God. We're this masterpiece that God created in His image for us to be who we are. No matter what you think is wrong with you, you're beautiful the way you are. And I think the problem is we don't realize the shortcomings of our beauty. And being a dreamer, a lot of people can look at that and say, I want to be a dreamer. But being a doer, I'm jealous of doers. I'm jealous of the people that can sit there and do things and not get bored.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is great, right? One of the things I joke around, if we're doing something in the church and we're cooking, let me do the dishes. Because I can't mess up the dishes, and I'm going to do the dishes. I'll clean the toilet. Don't ask me to dry the dishes.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to paint. Don't ask me to cut grass. Anything that's tedious, I can't do it. And I'm jealous of those doers, and doers are jealous of me of dreamers. And obviously, dreamers and doers are always jealous of the donors, because I always want more money, because guess what? You get more money, I can build a bigger thing in the future. So it is. It's a weakness.
That is good. And to kind of talk about leadership and where you're at as a company, and even your, we all have hiccups along the roads or potholes that we have to overcome. I'm so compelled by the values that you carry, not only in your family but here at your company. A lot of people, like you said, we work with a lot of companies all across the country, and there's only a few that we know of that really live out their values. So what are your values, and then how do you apply your values to your everyday life, specifically more within your company right now?
So I think the biggest thing with values is you can't memorize them, you have to internalize them. I'm going to say it again because I think it's so important. You can't memorize them, you have to internalize them. I talk about to my staff all the time. So a lot of times you take a test, you just memorize, but you didn't internalize it. Well, what's the point? When you read a book, you didn't internalize it, what you learned. What's the point of reading that book? Why waste your 5 or 6 hours reading that book? You need to internalize that information so you learn it. So one of the things that I do is a habit in my life. Every single day, I read my personal core values, my personal mission statement. And I read my company core values and my company mission statement every single day of my life. And I have an app that tracks it. And I've done that for a few years. That helps you internalize it. And when you internalize it and you constantly have it in front of you, the funny thing happens is you end up living it. I just did a sermon this past week talking about where your treasure is, your heart is. And it's amazing when we focus on things, how we end up changing our action. Kerry Newhoff talked in his book, Didn't See It Coming, that when you go to the point where you get so intentional that you will not lie about anything, if the meal's bad and the server asks you how it is, you say, oh, it's bad. Or if your wife comes out and says, how you look at his dress, you say, oh, it looks horrible. What ends up happening is because you're being so honest, it changes your action. Words do have power. And it sets your focus on that. So by internalizing that and listening to reading it every single day, I end up living out those values without even trying. And it becomes part of my vocabulary. Here we talk about Beratung language. We have a language of our culture. And it becomes where we actually use the words. When I tell people what I do, my mission statement comes out without me even realizing it. Because it's part of my words. So I think that that's the one thing that I do is I align my life by saying those words, and it comes out in my leadership. So our core values here is we have an acronym called Teach Passion. And what's funny is when I made my core values, the consultant I worked with, I said, I don't want an acronym. Because if it's an acronym, that means I change the order of importance or I change the meaning of them. God has a funny way of working, because we came out with them and it happened to be an acronym that was an acronym that actually described our core values in our company. That was God's hand. All he did was change 2 words, and when he told me that, he didn't tell me why he was changing the words. He actually said these are better words. He changed professionalism to honor, and he explained to me the difference, and actually I thought it was a better one. And he changed adjustable to adaptable, which kept the same A, but he thought it was a better word. And so they are teamwork. And the way we describe this to people, teamwork is a state of mind. Now, I'm a Steelers fan, and I can't stand the New England Patriots. But over the last 10 years, most people would agree the Steelers have been a better team on paper. They have more talent. But over the last 10 years, who has more championships? New England Patriots. Because it's a mindset. They're all focused in the same direction, and that's really what we want. We want a team of people that care about each other. Yeah. And it's not just us. We believe our clients, while we pray over them, is they're an extension of our team. I could not pay my bills if I didn't have clients. I could not run a company if I didn't have clients. They're part of our team, they're an extension, and we have to honor them as a team. And then we go to education, which is the E. We live out that values I talked to you about. We pay for professional development, personal development. We eat, sleep, live, and breathe that as leadership. I probably overlive that, if anything. Adaptable. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We try to do it for our clients and for our employees to make customized plans of growth. Your company helps us out a lot with that. Then we go to charitable. We can't force people to be charitable. We can create opportunities. So one of the things we do as a company, the first Saturday of every month, we feed the homeless in Pittsburgh through Howard International Ministries. We purchase the meals. We cook the meals. We deliver a gospel message, and we serve it. We don't force our employees, but we give them the opportunity to be there. But we use our resources. One of our visions for the future is we want to create a fund where every employee gets a certain amount of dollars, that they could pick a charity as long as it meets our core values, that they could take a day off. We'll go with them, deliver that check to that organization on behalf of that employee, and spend a day being involved in an organization. So we're going to create those opportunities for people. We're also going to live it out. Honor just means you put other people first. If you ask any of the employees, by the way, everyone knows we internalize it. We start every meeting with these. And not only do they have to, in their quarterly reviews, tell them what they are, they have to give an explanation in their own words. But this is the one that everyone knows. I always say that when you walk across the parking lot, you see trash, what do you do? And they all say,
Pick it up.
pick it up. And I say, when you empty a coffee pot, what do you do?
Clean it out.
Well, we say fill it up.
Oh, fill it
up. We drink a lot of coffee. Yeah. So, but yeah, the same thing. That's honoring. And it goes down to, you printed out something and it's not angled right, take the extra time. Yeah. I wear a suit every day. And I'm not telling my team members to wear a suit. But if you wear a suit Monday through Thursday, you better darn well wear a suit on Friday and Saturday if you work. If you wear khakis and a polo Monday through Thursday, then wear khakis and polo on Friday. Because what you just told that person on Friday is you don't honor them.
Wow.
Because why did you wear a suit? If you have a big appointment and you wear a suit, you're not a fit for our company. Because you're saying that big appointment's more important than that little appointment. You shouldn't be dealing with that client if they're not important to you. That's that honor level. I always get asked at church, I wear a suit to church. And people ask me when I was youth advisors, kids ask me, Craig, why do you wear a suit to church? I said, it's my way of honoring God. But that doesn't mean that people don't wear a suit or honoring God. It's my way. And here's what I say. If God was in human form on that altar, you could actually see him, which I believe he's present there every day. What would you wear to church that day? Whatever your answer is, if you're looking face to face, because some people it's flip-flops and shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, and God bless them. And that's the way they honor God. Yeah. We all honor God different ways. How do we honor our clients and each other as a team? And the last one is passion. And that's the core. And there's a reason why everyone's a letter and the last one's a one word, because none of those mean anything without passion. Anyone knows me for 5 seconds will tell you I'm probably the most passionate people.
You are passionate.
And I'm passionate about the core values. And that's what we want. We want people that love what we do, that wake up, that have a strong why that aligns with our why. My personal values is also an acronym. And again, didn't mean like this is God working. It really truly is. So my own personal one is serve, which is also my why. And so S stands for serve. I serve God by serving others. Education. To teach, to learn, you must teach. And I truly believe that. So one of the things I do is I try to teach all the time. R stands for resolute. So I have conviction, and I lead by conviction. So I truly believe that's something that is one of my difference makers as a leader. I'm firm. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm going to own up to it, and I'm going to go that way, but I'm going to let you know where I stand in that. They're always going to have a crystal clear. I'm always resolute, right? I just think that that's something, when you really look at it, how many people really are resolute? That's what people want. They want clarity.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier,
Oh,
clarity. Then the other one is virtuous. And so one of the things I try to do is I try to lead by example. It's perfect. Just means it's a core value. I try to always make my actions line up my words. It doesn't always happen. I'm human. We're all falling.
Yeah.
And the last one's energy. I try to bring energy and positive mental attitude. My dad always used to talk about PMA. Greg, you just got PMA, positive mental attitude. He said 90% of being sick is mental attitude and 10% is physical. Now, when he was on his deathbed dying of cancer, I kind of jabbed him a little bit. I said, where's your mental attitude? But he did live a lot longer than he was supposed to, and he fought it because he had PMA, positive mental attitude. And that's what I try to bring in. There's a guy, and I can't remember the name of him. He was early on, if you ever listened to the L3 Leadership podcast, he was in the early 20 episodes, but he talked about a high five and a smile can change the world. And it's so much fun. When you walk into a room and you get the high five, it's like, let's bring the high five back. What's it do? It brings energy in the room. So those are my core values. You can tell how I can read them right away. I've internalized them. That's not something I memorized. I've internalized. I try to live out my life. And I think the thing is, you can have separate core values in your company, but they have to be in alignment. And I think each one of our employees is unique. And each one has their personal core values, but we want team members that line up with our core values and live out our core values every day. When your personal core values are not going to be in alignment with ours, we're not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are really important. And I think that if every company could just live its core values, it'd be different. Stop making core values of who you want to be, and make core values of who you are. So when we sat down, being the founder of the company, when I was smaller then, they were just an extension of my personality. They were literally just somebody describing who I was. Well, as the leader of the company, that becomes the company's core values. We have it now, that it's our culture. It really is. Anyone that comes in and works here, they're going to say that is our culture. If I die tomorrow, my business partner's going to step in and they're going to lead on those core values. Everyone's going to lead on those core values. Nobody right now in our organization is more important than the other person, because we can exist if any one of us were to pass away tomorrow, because that's where we're building it. We're building it on our core values, not on people.
That's so good. And I think that just ties up this whole podcast, because that's what we started off with. When you were leaving that Fortune 500 company, your values weren't aligned. And I think it's so true in companies. They might be a good fit. We do behavioral assessments. They might be a good fit behaviorally and cognitively, but their values don't align. And the best thing you could do for a company, if your values don't align with them, is to leave the organization and go find a company that your values align, because it really does. It makes your life easier when you wake up every day and say, you know what, I love coming to work, number one, because I love what I do, but also for who we are and what we stand for. So, Greg, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. I know you're going to speak so much life, and that positive attitude just comes right through you. And we're so thankful that you spent this half hour with us talking about your leadership journey and kind of how you kind of lead through not only your family but within your company as well. So we appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, awesome.